Files, where we dive into the most infamous crimes, conspiracies, and criminal mysteries in history. I'm your host, Sleeping Beauty. Today, on Criminal Files, we're pricking our finger on the thory case of Elizabeth Bathory. We're going to separate the blood from the bloodlust, the facts from the folklore. Let's get into it. You know me. I'm familiar with the story about a noble woman from a forgotten era, a curse, and a narrative that has been spun for centuries. So trust me when I say, I know a fairy tale when I hear one. And the story of our subject today is one of the darkest fairy tales ever told. Countess Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess, accused of torturing and murdering over 650 young women in the early 1600s. Her story is a cornerstone of true crime. It's got everything: a dark castle, whispers of witchcraft, and the infamous, gory detail that she bathed in the blood of virgins to stay young forever. I mean, come on. That sounds less like a historical record and more like the plot of a heavy metal album. But for 400 years, we've accepted it. We've made her a monster. But what if she was also a victim? A victim of politics, of misogyny, and a cover-up so successful, it's still putting people to sleep, believing the same old story. Well, I've had my fill up of long naps. It's time to wake up and investigate. First, we need to set the scene. It's the late 1500s. Hungary is in a battlefield, caught between the Holy Roman Empire to the west and the Ottoman Empire to the south. It is a place of constant war, violence, and immense power struggles. And into this world, Elizabeth Bathory was born in 1560. And she wasn't just any noble. The Bathory family were literally royalty. Her uncle was Stephen Bathory, the King of Poland, and the Grand Duke of Lithuania. She was educated and fluent in multiple languages, which was rare for a woman at the time. And she was married off at 15 to a powerful military figure, Ferenc Nasady. Ferenc was known as the Black Knight of Hungary for his brutal tactics against the Ottomans. By all accounts, this was a power couple. While Ferenc was off at war, Elizabeth was left to manage her vast estates, a small empire of castles, land, and villages. She was essentially a CEO, a judge, and a banker rolled into one. She was a formidable woman in a world that was deeply terrified of formidable women. Now this is where the official story begins. After Ferenc's death in 1604, the rumours started. Whispers from her estate, from the village of Countess, where her favourite castle stood. Whispers of missing young peasant girls. Whispers of cruelty, of torture, of dark practices within the castle walls. These stories are graphic. I'm going to give you a quick content warning here. The alleged methods include beating, burning, freezing, starvation, and needle torture. According to the testimonies later gathered, her inner circle of servants helped her lure young peasant girls and serving women for these brutal sessions. But the big one, the detail that launched 1,000 Gothic novels, is the bloodbath. The story goes that a young servant girl accidentally pulled Elizabeth's hair while brushing it. Elizabeth struck her so hard she drew blood, which spattered on Elizabeth's hand. Later, Elizabeth believed that the skin under the blood spot looked younger and more vibrant, and thus the quest for eternal youth by virgin's blood was born. It's a perfect, morbidly poetic origin story. But is it true? Or is it just too perfect? This is where the cause gets hazy, and where I start to get suspicious. Because in 1610, things come to a head. King Mathis II of Hungary, who owned the Bathory family a ton of money, sent his palatine, Gorgi Thurzo, to investigate. Thurzo moved fast. He conducted a quick investigation, collecting testimonies from hundreds of witnesses. Though it was worth noting, these were mostly from people who were her subordinates or enemies. And then, in a midnight raid on December 29th, 1610, he stormed the castle. The legend says he caught Elizabeth Bathory in the act, covered in blood, mid-torture. The official report is a little less dramatic. It says they found one girl dead and one girl dying. But they did find enough evidence and enough terrified witnesses to arrest her and her accomplices. But here's the first weird part. Elizabeth Bathory, a countess, a woman of immense stature, was formerly never tried, but her servants were, and they were brutally executed after being tortured into giving confessions. One was burned at the stake, another was beheaded, another had her fingers torn off before execution. Standard, cheerful 17th century stuff. But Elizabeth? She was simply walled up in a set of rooms in her own castle. No windows, just small slits for her food to be passed through. She lived like that for 4 years, until she died in 1614. But why no public trial for the main event? The biggest serial killer ever. Why hide her away? The official reason was that they were to execute a noble woman of her stature would bring shame upon the atrocity. But I'm not buying it. That's the weak tea of excuse. When a story doesn't add up, you have to look for the motive. And that's where the theories come in. Theory 1. The monster. Let's start with the official story. Theory 1. She was exactly what they said she was, a sadistic serial killer. The evidence for this is the mountain of testimonies. Over 300 witnesses described the atrocities. The diaries, allegedly kept by Elizabeth herself, listing the names of over 650 victims. The stories are consistent and horrifying. Proponents of this theory argue that her birth, her privilege, and the constant violence of her era. Her husband was a famously cruel warrior, after all. Desensitized her. She saw peasants' girls as disposable, less than human, and merely tools for her amusement and quest for her eternal beauty. The blood bathing, they argue, could have been a twisted form of sympathetic magic. She believed in the power of blood. It's not that far-fetched for the time. This theory says that she wasn't tried was simply because the evidence was so overwhelming and that a trial would be messy and embarrassing for the family. They contain the problem and move on. It's a clean, simple, and terrifying theory. But is it too clean? The number 650 is astronomical. There's a rating of killing that would be logistically insane to maintain for years without everyone in a 100-mile radius knowing about it. And the bloodbath? The science is nonsense. Blood coagulates. It doesn't work as a skincare serum. It's a detail that just feels like it was added to make her seem not just evil, but supernaturally evil. Demonic, one would say. Which, in the 1600s, was a very specific and useful accusation to level at a powerful woman.
Hey everyone, it's Nene here. Before we continue with the episode, I want to give a quick reminder that if you are interested to see more case files in VR chat, make sure to hit that subscribe button right down below. And be sure to turn that notification bell so you can get notified whenever Hayden uploads a new video. Thank you so much.
Bathory was a victim of political assassination. Let's look at the facts. They don't always lead within the storybooks. Fact. Elizabeth was incredibly wealthy. Fact. Her husband, Ferenc, had loaned a massive sum of money to the crown, the King Matthewson himself. Fact. When a nobleman died, his wealth passed on to his widow. Fact. If that widow was found guilty of crimes against God and man, her wealth could be seized by the crown, and that would mean the debt would be wiped clean. Do you see it? The motive is right there. King Matthewson was in deep debt to a dead man's estate, an estate controlled by a formidable, politically connected, and independent woman who had no intention of letting that debt slide. But how do you take down a woman that powerful? You can't just accuse her of stealing. You need something bigger. You need something that turns everyone against her. You need to make her a monster. So you send your man, Thurzo. You collect testimonies. In a time of immense class strife, it wasn't hard to find peasants willing to testify against a cruel noble, especially if there's any truth to the rumours of her harshness. You torture her servants until they confess to anything. You fabricate a sensational story about bloodbaths, a story so shocking it overshadows everything. You create a legend, and in doing so, you achieve these three things. You erase your massive debt, you seize all of her land and wealth, and lastly, you remove a powerful, autonomous woman from the chessboard. It's a perfect win. The bloodbath story isn't just a horror detail. It's a strategic piece of propaganda. It dehumanizes her so completely that no one would ever question her punishment or feel sympathy. It's much easier to wall up a demon than it is to execute a sophisticated businesswoman you owe money to. This theory explains the lack of a trial. A trial would have given her a platform. It would have allowed her to defend herself, to call witnesses, and to perhaps reveal the truth about the king's finances. They couldn't risk it. So, they presented a fair accomplice. The monster has been captured and contained. The problem solved. Now, about that deed to the castle. Theory 3. The complicity. But maybe the truth isn't so black and white. Maybe it's a deep, deep red shade. Theory 3. The kernel of truth theory. This theory posts that Elizabeth Bathory was almost certainly a harsh and cruel noblewoman. Life was cheap, especially lives of peasants. She likely punished her servants brutally, but they were tragically not uncommon for the era. Perhaps girls did die under her care due to abuse or neglect. The rumours started because of this. The stories began to circulate, and her political enemies, and there were many, saw an opportunity. They took those kernels of truth, those terrible rumours of a cruel mistress, and they amplified them. They weaponized them. They added the satanic elements, the bloodbaths, the astronomical numbers, turning a brutal noble into a heroic fiend to ensure her complete and total destruction. In this theory, she wasn't an innocent angel, but she also wasn't the vampire demon of the legend. She was a product of her violent, cruel time, who was then used as a pawn in a much larger game by the men around her. They didn't create the monster from nothing. They took a real, flawed, and dangerous person and turned her into a myth to serve their purposes. So which theory holds water? Let's look at the evidence. The biggest piece of evidence for the political theory is the debt. It's a historical fact. The king owed her money, and a lot of it. and after she was walled up, he didn't have to pay it back. That's not circumstantial, that's motive. Secondly, the diary of 650 victims. No one has actually ever seen this diary. It's always referred to in second-hand accounts. Many historians believe it likely wasn't a murder tally, but a list of servants, perhaps with notes on disciplinary actions. It was reinterpreted by her accusers. Third, the bloodbath. The first time this specific accusation appears in writing is decades after her death. It's not in the original accusations from Thurzo. It seems to be added later, which reeks of a legend growing in the telling. And finally, the context. This was the peak of the European witch trials, accusing powerful, independent women of consorting with the devil was a textbook way to discredit and destroy her. The pattern fits perfectly. The evidence for the she was a monster theory is the sheer volume of testimony. You can't just ignore 300 witnesses. But were they coerced? Were they telling Thurzo what he wanted to hear? Were they angry peasants exaggerating the cruelties of their lord? It's entirely possible. So what's the verdict? After being asleep to the nuances of this story for so long, what do I, Sleeping Beauty, think? I think Elizabeth Bathory was almost certainly a cruel woman. The times demanded it. But I don't believe for a second she killed 650 people. The logistics are impossible. I absolutely do not believe she bathed in blood. The detail is folklore, designed to make her myth instead of a person. I believe theory 2 is most likely. The political assassination. The motive is too clear, and the outcome is too convenient. The king got rich, and a powerful woman was neutralized, and a terrible story was created to hide the boring, greedy truth. The real horror isn't a countess in blood-soaked tub. It's the cynical, calculated use of power to destroy a life, the money, and the land. They needed a monster, so they made one. They took a woman and turned her into a fairy tale, the worst kind. A warning to any other woman who might get too powerful, too independent, too difficult. And they were so good at it that 400 years later, we're still telling their story. We're still whispering about the Blood Countess, while the names of the men who orchestrated her real downfall are footnotes. They are the real monsters of this story. They're the ones who truly understood the power of the curse. Elizabeth Bathory wasn't tried because she was guilty. She was ruled up because she was inconvenient. And the history, written by the winners, did the rest. So next time you hear her story, the story of a woman who bathed in blood to stay young, remember this. Every fairy tale has a purpose. Sometimes the purpose is to entertain. Sometimes it's to teach a lesson. And sometimes it's to make sure the truth sleeps forever. I'm Sleeping Beauty, and this has been Criminal Files.
What criminal case do you want to see next? Comment below. It's Hanako here again. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you, and feel free to share this video with anyone who might enjoy it too. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next video.